Let's talk about what's been buzzing in Philly lately, the Isaiah Rodgers situation. Now, with the Eagles getting ready to face the Vikings, the timing couldn't be better to dive into this topic. But let me tell you something. This isn't just about a player switching teams. It's about vibes, locker room chemistry, the next man up mentality, and maybe even a little sacrifice for the greater good. Yeah, we're going to unpack all that. And trust me, there's more to this story than just numbers on a contract. First, let's address what's been floating around. Reports say Isaiah Rodgers had the option to stay in Philly. There was a matching offer on the table. He didn't take it. On paper, that sounds like a player who wanted out. But I don't buy that. Not entirely. If you've followed this team closely, if you've watched how Rodgers carried himself, how he fought for a roster spot after a suspension, how he performed in limited snaps, then you know this wasn't about running away. It might have been about stepping aside. You see, I believe Rodgers had a real bond with Ringo. That's not just some surface-level teammate stuff. From everything I've heard and seen, those two got close. Locker room tight. And here's where it gets interesting. Ringo had been waiting for his shot, stuck behind vets, grinding in practice, watching from the sidelines. And Rodgers knew, if he signed that extension in Philly, Ringo might not get the opportunity he deserved. So what does Rodgers do? He bets on himself elsewhere. He chooses Minnesota. Not because he hates Philly, not because he's chasing a payday, but maybe, just maybe, because he wanted his guy to shine. That's not something you hear every day in this league. Now let's be real. It's not like Rodgers went to a dumpster fire. The Vikings offered 2 years, $7.5 million. Not some break-the-bank deal, but enough to say, hey, we believe in you. And if Philly matched it, which reports say they did, then Rodgers had a choice. And the choice wasn't just about money or minutes. It might have been about legacy, about helping a young player grow, about leaving the locker room better than he found it. That's what I think happened. That's my theory. And yeah, it might sound crazy in today's NFL where loyalty is rare, but sometimes the most powerful moves are the quiet ones. Now I get it. Some Eagles fans are mad, confused, asking why we let him walk. But here's what you gotta understand. Rodgers didn't just leave because he felt unwanted. He left because he knew the cornerback room had young talent that needed space to breathe. If Slay was already out the door, and that cap hit made it inevitable, then it was time for someone like Ringo to step up. And Rodgers, being the dog he is, probably saw that clearer than anyone. That's leadership, even if it hurts in the short term. Of course, all this looks worse now because, let's be honest, Ringo hasn't exactly lit it up. He's had his struggles, and now everyone's looking at Howie Roseman like, why didn't you go a little higher? Why not 8 or 9 million? But the truth is, the offer was there, and Rodgers made his decision. The front office didn't fumble it. They tried. But when a player's heart is set on something bigger than the game, sometimes all you can do is respect it. And let's not act like Rodgers didn't produce when given the chance. In my opinion, he was the second best corner on the team behind Slay. And even then, there were stretches where I'd argue Rodgers played better, especially considering Slay's injury issues. The man was durable, dependable, and flat-out confident in coverage. If it wasn't for that early hand injury, who knows how the secondary rotation would have looked? Maybe we don't even see Ringo till later in the year. But fate stepped in, Rodgers went down, Ringo stepped up, and the picture started to shift. The locker room dynamic played a role too. This wasn't some divided or chaotic place. From what I'm picking up, the players were tight. They respected each other. They had each other's backs. When you've got that kind of bond, sometimes guys make decisions that benefit the group over the individual. That's not weakness. That's strength. And that's why I believe Rodgers chose Minnesota with purpose. He knew he could start there, but he also knew Philly would be all right. He left the room in good hands. Or at least, that's what he hoped. Now let's transition a bit because the vibe in the Eagles locker room seems to be shifting in a good way. After a rough couple of games and a mini-bye, it feels like the energy is returning. You can hear it in the way the guys talk. You can feel it when they step to the mic. A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, all of them giving off this quiet confidence. Like they know what went wrong and they're ready to fix it. No panic. No finger-pointing. Just focus. A.J. Brown said it best. You can't let losses humble you too much. You've got to stay aggressive. Stay motivated. And the way he's talking, the way he's carrying himself, it's clear he's locked in. This isn't the AJ from 2 seasons ago. This is a guy who's been through the ups and downs and knows how to bounce back. And that kind of leadership is contagious. Then you've got Jalen Hurts out here talking about energy in practice, about guys flying around, about hunger. That's what you want to hear from your quarterback. Not just cliches and empty words, but belief. Belief that this team hasn't peaked. Belief that they're still writing their story. Hurts knows what it takes. And if he's not panicking, then why should we? Even Saquon, who's still finding his place in this offense, seems upbeat. He talked about the offensive meeting during the bye, about the importance of communication and detail, about finding that identity again. That's a real pro right there, not just pointing out the problems, but trusting the process to fix them. And let's be honest, a guy like Saquon has seen enough bad situations to know when one's salvageable. And clearly, he thinks this one is. Now, there's still work to be done. Execution has to improve. The offense has to click. But the signs are there. The right conversations are happening. The right energy is starting to flow. And if you're an Eagles fan, that's all you can ask for right now. A locker room that hasn't turned on itself. A group of leaders who are leaning in, not checking out. A squad that's bruised, but not broken. So when we circle back to Isaiah Rodgers, it all ties together. His departure wasn't a betrayal. It was part of the evolution of this team. A tough, but maybe necessary step in the journey. And as this team prepares to take the field against Minnesota, they're not just trying to win a game. They're trying to prove that the culture in Philly is still strong, that the standard hasn't dropped, and that the road ahead, bumpy as it might be, is still wide open. All right, so now that we've gone deep into the Isaiah Rodgers story and how his move might have been more about loyalty than business, let's turn the page and look at where this Eagles team is headed right now. After back-to-back losses, you'd expect some panic, some finger-pointing, maybe even a little tension in the locker room. But that's not what's happening here. Not even close. What we're seeing and hearing is a group of guys that seem locked in, motivated, and ready to turn things around. The way the players are talking, the way they're carrying themselves in interviews, it doesn't sound like a team in crisis. It sounds like a team that's had a gut check and is now refocused. Let's start with the vibes. Because in football, that locker room energy matters just as much as any stat line. After that extended weekend off, Friday through Sunday, the team came back with a different tone. You can feel it in the interviews. Guys aren't dwelling on the losses. They're owning it, but they're not stuck in it. When Nakobe Dean spoke, he didn't sugarcoat things. He said they had to bring the nastiness back, the violence, the toughness. And let me tell you, when you hear that from a leader on the defensive side, it hits different. That's not someone just checking a media box. That's someone who's feeling the urgency and calling out what needs to change. Then there's the injury front. And for once, things actually look promising. Jalen Carter, full participant. Jordan Davis, full participant. That's massive for the defensive line. Carter even said his heel feels good and that he's ready to go. He talked about how it happened during practice and how it kind of crept up on him out of nowhere. But the way he described his recovery, you could tell he's confident. Not just hoping to play, but expecting to make an impact. That kind of mentality spreads. When your young stars are eager to get back on the field and contribute, it gives everyone else a boost. Jordan Davis, though, has been a bit of a mystery. Quiet on the stat sheet. Quiet on the field. And now we know why. A shoulder issue that probably limited him more than we realized. Still, he's back, practicing fully. And now that we've got a clearer picture of what's been going on, maybe we'll start to see that explosiveness again. Because let's be real, when Davis is right, that entire defensive front hits different. That run game starts to shut down, and opposing quarterbacks feel that pressure a lot faster. And yeah, Grant Calcaterra is still dealing with that rib issue, and a few other guys like Zach Bond and Quinyon Mitchell were limited. But overall, this is probably the healthiest the team has looked in a minute. That's not just about bodies on the field. It's about depth, rotation, and being able to scheme the way you want. When everyone's banged up, you're just trying to survive. But when you're healthy, you can go out and attack. You can dictate the game instead of reacting to it. And that's where the Eagles need to get back to. Let's get into the offense now, because that's where things really need to shift. A.J. Brown said something that stuck with me. Don't let a loss humble you too much. That's the kind of attitude you want from your number one receiver. You don't want guys hanging their heads. You want them pissed off, focused, hungry. And Brown looks like he's in that mode. He talked about communication being key, about cleaning up execution on third downs and not beating themselves. It's the simple stuff, really. But when you're not doing the basics right, It doesn't matter how talented you are. Execution is everything. Jalen Hurts echoed that too. You could see it in his face. Calm but determined. He talked about guys flying around in practice. That they're still hungry. That they're still in it. That's the kind of leadership you need when the outside noise gets loud. Hurts has never been the type to show much emotion publicly, but when he says the team is in a good place mentally, I believe him. Because he's the heartbeat of this squad. If he's locked in, the rest will follow. And I gotta mention Saquon Barkley. Now, he's still relatively new to this team, but the way he's carrying himself already speaks volumes. He talked about the offensive meetings during the bye and how important it was to have open, honest conversations. He didn't throw anyone under the bus. He just said straight up, we're in a good spot at 4-2, but we've got to be better. And he's right. 4-2 isn't a disaster. It's actually a pretty solid place to be, especially considering how banged up this team has been and how inconsistent the play has looked at times. But it's not about the record right now. It's about identity. About finding that groove again. Last year, this offense had an identity. You knew what they were trying to do, and more often than not, they did it well. Right now, it's been a little up and down. One week they're explosive, the next they can't get a rhythm. But from the way these guys are talking, it sounds like they know what's been missing, and they're ready to fix it. Now let's not act like everything is solved just because the locker room feels good. They still have to show it on the field. And this game against Minnesota is going to be a real test. Not just because of who the opponent is, but because of what this game represents. A chance to bounce back. A chance to prove that the swagger is back. That the Eagles aren't going to fade after a couple losses. That this team can respond the right way. FlyEaglesFly News family, smash subscribe and hit like. Your support keeps the freshest Philadelphia Eagles updates flying in. Drop your take in the comments, and let's talk birds. Storm clouds seem to be gathering over Philadelphia as whispers around the league hint at a brewing unrest that could shake the Eagles' offense to its core. Sources close to the team suggest that A.J. Brown, one of the marquee stars of the squad, is growing increasingly frustrated with his situation in Philadelphia. While the receiver's talent on the field has never been in question, insiders claim that it's the circumstances off the field and in the playbook that are driving a wedge between him and the organization. According to these murmurs, Brown's discontent stems not from a lack of targets or chemistry with the quarterback, but from what some call a restrictive scheme that doesn't fully leverage his explosive skills. The whispers hint that he feels underutilized, with certain formations and routes limiting the dynamic plays that have made him a household name. Teammates reportedly notice his frustration spilling over in practice sessions, where the usually composed receiver has been visibly irritated, a rarity for a player of his experience and professionalism. The Eagles, meanwhile, have maintained their usual air of confidence, publicly downplaying any suggestion of internal tension. Yet, league insiders are quick to point out that a star player quietly simmering with dissatisfaction can ripple across the locker room, affecting morale and the timing of the offense. Some analysts speculate that Brown's unhappiness might even influence future trade talks, as the team weighs keeping its top talent happy against the risk of losing him in a deal that could bring in multiple assets. What makes this story particularly spicy is the rumored source of the conflict. It's not money, nor is it off-field drama. Rather, it's a philosophical difference about how the offense is run. Brown, known for his explosive speed and ability to break tackles, reportedly wants more freedom and creativity in the play calling, something that the current system may not allow consistently. Coaches are said to be aware of the situation, quietly tweaking schemes, but insiders caution that if adjustments aren't substantial, the Eagles could be facing more than just a rocky season. They might be facing a true shakeup in their star lineup. For now, fans can only watch as the tension simmers, with rumors suggesting that the next few weeks could be decisive. Will the Eagles find a way to reinvigorate their star receiver and keep their offense humming? Or is this just the beginning of a story that could dominate headlines in Philadelphia for months to come? One thing is certain. When a player of A.J. Brown's caliber is visibly frustrated, the league takes notice, and so should the Eagles fans. That's a wrap from FlyEaglesFly News. If you want the fastest Eagles updates, subscribe, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Sound off in the comments. Let's talk birds.